afternoon, good morning, good evening, and welcome to episode 3 of DaaM-U-Football. The Premier League season is upon us, and we've had the first weekend, match day 1, which we'll go through some of that and what happened there, and some thoughts and some kind of machinations over that opening weekend of football, and looking forward to what we can expect to get from it, etc. I'm also going to do a little bit of kind of like transfer chat, but not really as in-depth as we've done before, just a little bit of my reflections on the whole Neymar deal, and also I'm going to cover my reflections on what the Coutinho saga that's developing at Liverpool Football Club means to Liverpool, means to Liverpool fans, means to, I think, the Premier League as a whole, and kind of what this summer of unique spending, how that's kind of come about and where I personally think that will go. I'm also going to do a quick, well, not quick, I don't know, might be quick, might not be, who knows. I'm going to do a rundown of my thoughts on this year's Premier League kits. Yes, a few people have asked for this, and I always enjoy kind of looking at them and kind of giving my thoughts on them, pros, cons, whether or not people look stupid or which ones I like. I'm shooting the Premier League for now. As we get into the European seasons, and I will chat a little bit of European football, I might do a rundown of the best kits in Europe, because there's usually some quite fun ones out there as well. So without further ado, I think we should kind of delve into it, because football is back with a bang, and the Premier League opened for the first time ever on a Friday. And what I will say before I kind of get into each game, just for clarification purposes, I only actually watched 4 of the games in their entirety, and the rest of them I watched the extended highlights on Sky, the match choice thing where you get essentially 50 minutes of each game. So I've watched those. I watched the Arsenal game, I watched the Liverpool game, and I also watched the Newcastle-Tottenham game, and I also watched the Manchester United-West Ham game. So they were the 4 games that I watched in their entirety, as well as, like I say, watching the 50 minutes highlights. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the Swansea and Southampton highlights. I watched just the general kind of 5 or 6 minute highlights, because it was a 0-0, and I'm not watching 50 minutes of a 0-0 game between two teams who are chronically mid-table. So there was that. So there's kind of like my full clarification there. Other things to kind of discuss. I personally feel that the opening day of the season is the least. It is the weirdly, I think it's one of the most important, least important fixtures in football, in a sense where it's woefully unimportant, because you cannot use it as a barometer at the time for kind of for whether or not a team's done well or not. So I mean, for instance, you can take Huddersfield's results, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail when I get to it. Essentially, they won 3-0 away from home in their opening game, in the top flight, and then you can take that and say, well, that's an amazing result, and it is. But Huddersfield, it might be the last great result they have. They might have got a really good run. They might make a really good crack at the Premier League, and then also you can take something like. There we go. For instance, Liverpool's 3-3 draw with Watford. Now, an away draw is always a decent result. To be honest, a point away from home is always okay. Now, Watford could end up finishing 7th or 8th this season. They could have an amazing season, and you could look back at that and go, that's a good point. Counterpoint to that, Watford could get relegated, and you could look back at that and go, what the shit. But I'll get more into my actual thoughts thoroughly on that game as we go in. But we'll start with the opening game, Arsenal versus Leicester, the 4-3 that occurred there. Another barnstorming opening game. Last season's opening game was Liverpool at Arsenal, and there was a 4-3 again, and that was another sort of bristling home game for Arsenal, where they actually got defeated that time. This time they managed to pull it back and win. They opened very well, actually, did Arsenal, scoring from a Lacazette goal, which was a good finish. And it's a good kind of a good boost for those to have that opening sort of goal in the first few minutes, but then they quickly kind of went back to the Arsenal that's been thrown at them. This fragility they've got, and this ability to kind of, when a team goes at them, they kind of go at their shells, and it's something that Arsene Wenger seems very quick to kind of come out and say, well, we've shown great resilience, which they did show fantastic resilience against Leicester. To be 2-1 down, and then to bring it back to 2-2, and then to go 3-2 down, but then to bring it back and get a win shows amazing resilience. But the problem is, resilience gets you to a certain position in the Premier League. It doesn't win you it. resilience. It doesn't. You know, teams win titles. You know, they don't get, for all intents and purposes, lucky wins against Leicester at home. But then again, it's the opening day of the season, and we've got to take that into consideration. Personally, if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be more worried about the fact that they conceded some quite easy goals against Leicester, and they didn't seem to control the game. Counterpoint to that is they scored some quite easy goals, but I do think Leicester will be a very, very easy team to score goals against this season. I don't think they have a strong squad. They've got clinical finishers. Vardy, his movement is fantastic, etc. And they've also brought in Iheanacho, which I think is a great signing from Manchester City, because his actual minutes to goals ratio is quite incredible. So I'm interested. I've actually got him in my fantasy team, so I'm interested to see when he gets on the pitch how he can translate that. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between scoring goals for Manchester City when you've got those kind of creative forces to Leicester. So there is that to consider. Also, I don't think Leicester are going to keep on playing Drinkwater. I think he could end up at Chelsea. I think that will intensify. Arsenal tend to have their business sorted. I think what will happen is Arsenal's business might be a couple more ins if they have some unexpected or kind of maybe even expected outs. It would seem that Ozil is on Barcelona's radar, but I do think that is possibly Ozil's people actually using it to kind of get Arsenal to up that offer that little bit there. So a 4-3 for Leicester, for Arsenal with Leicester. It's going to abate the Wenger out brigade ever so slightly, but it still seems like it's going to be unless they go on a very good run and they cement themselves early on within that top four parameters there, and you know they very quickly by sort of October, November, they look like that's it. They're going to be one of the four. I think it is going to be a topsy-turvy season for Arsenal. I think him leaving it that late to announce that he's staying and to I think the way it was dealt with almost like, I don't think he was ever going to leave. I think nobody ever thought he was going to leave, and it feels. I think it's crazy in the sense that I don't know what Arsenal fans want. They seem to not want, or some of them anyway, seem to not want Wenger, but there isn't a viable, that guy to come in. I know a lot of people have shouted Diego Simeone, but Arsenal fans wouldn't like Diego Simeone's football. That's just a given. Or even looking at bringing someone like Thomas Tuchel in there, but of course, you know, there's weird things happen with him leaving Dortmund. Leicester, I think, are going to finish mid-table. I think they've got a decent squad to finish mid-table. I just don't see it with Craig Shakespeare. I think they're still riding the high of Craig Shakespeare not being Claudio Ranieri. So that there is that. Moving into Saturday's action. Watford 3, Liverpool 3. Familiar problems for Liverpool in terms of being unable to defend set pieces. That was it. We were undone by 2 set pieces, and the sheer physicality of Watford. Now, the idea is often sort of thrown at certain teams, and Liverpool are one of them. And I know that Manchester City sometimes get this, and because Liverpool play or are perceived to play a flowing attacking football, it's perceived that they're a light touch. Well, actually, you know, you've got in the midfield, you've got players like Emre Can was there. Emre Can's a unit. There's no way of getting around it. And Gini Wijnaldum is not slight of build or anything like that. So, but the size of Watford was incredible. They're a hell of a unit of a team. And it seems like Marco Silva has kind of picked up a little bit where he left off. I mean, this is a manager I think has lost, it's 6 or 8 games in his actual managerial career at home. He will be looking to make British Park a very tough place for teams to go, and it would seem from the way that Liverpool played in the first half that he's going to achieve that. 3-3 is probably a fair reflection of the game, to be honest. Watford were very much on top in the first half, and Liverpool couldn't get a hand on it, and it did seem that I don't think it's as much the Coutinho stuff that rattled them, although I think that must have been in their heads. I think it's as much the fact that the summer hasn't quite gone the way that Liverpool fans would have hoped, and I think that Liverpool the coaching staff would have hoped. Top targets haven't been brought in. The squad itself is thin. There's no denying that. I don't think it's aided by the fact that Liverpool technically they're not actually in the Champions League yet. They're in the Champions League qualifiers. They've got to play Hoffenheim on Tuesday of this week and of Wednesday of next week. So there is that to consider. Maybe that's halting things ever so slightly in the transfer market. I don't think so, being honest, but I think that could be used as an excuse if they do well and purchase people going forward. I'll talk about the Coutinho thing in further detail after I've gone through this week's games and give kind of my views on that. But once Liverpool were flowing and were kind of in their groove, they were magnificent again. Firmino came into the game and they looked really strong in that sense. I saw the argument from or between Jamie Carragher and Jim Redknapp, where Jamie Redknapp was arguing that someone like Van Dijk in there would give that dominance that maybe isn't there, and Carragher arguing that it's not the dominance that the problem is, it's the positioning and the fact that there's a lack of kind of organisation within there. And I think that actually they're both arguing the same point. I think they're both right. I think that that more commanding presence. These balls are not being fired over, they've been fired in, and there seems to be a lack of attacking presence coming out towards it. And also, it does seem to be second balls that Liverpool seem to struggle on. There is the point of the fact is that the third goal it is offside, there's no getting away from it, but it's a tricky offside to spot is what I'd say, and you can't, it's not a crying injustice. Liverpool, A, there's a free kick before it, Liverpool should defend better, and B, you shouldn't be in that position at that time of the game. Liverpool could have put that game to bed and been 4-2 up a couple of times, but wasteful attacking play led to that. It should never have been that. Now, what I'd say there is a 3-3 draw against Watford in the middle of October or in the middle of March, when you have top four or even to an extent title aspirations, I think is a bad result. I think a 3-3 away at Watford on the opening day of the season isn't a terrible result, and the reason why I can say I don't think it's a terrible result is because the next game that I'm going to talk about, Chelsea 2, Burnley 3. Well, there you go, Chelsea last season's champions, and Chelsea actually had a bad start to last season and then went on to win it, aided by a 14-game winning streak within the middle of that season, that last season, that really helped them kind of gather up those points and gather up that momentum. And beyond that, they were essentially, all they had to do was just kind of really just coast to that title, which was what they did, and there's no kind of shame in that. Now, Chelsea have quietly spent quite a lot of money actually, but they don't seem to have actually strengthened that actual team. They've bolstered the squad a little bit, but the actual 1 to 11 or even 1 to 14, you could argue, because it is a squad game, and it's not just about having the best 1 to 11 now. It's about, you have a team who can have the best 1 to 11. For instance, I think that Tottenham have the best 1 to 11 in the Premier League, but Chelsea last season had a better 1 to 14. If you go into a 1 to 18, Manchester City had a better 1 to 18. And then if you go to a 1 to 22, then it broadens out there, and it's those places that kind of that dictate, I think, where you finish. It's not who is your best starting team or even who's your best bench. It's who your best starting 11 is and your best bench is if you've got 2 or 3 players out. And what Chelsea showed is that they're once you get past their 14, there's a lack of depth there. Getting your new captain, leader, new legend sent off in the first 15 minutes doesn't help. I think it was harsh, to be honest, Cahill sending off. I think that I look back on it and it's a lunge, and it's not a nice lunge, but there's no malice in it. It's not an attack. The player wasn't badly hurt or anything. I think maybe you could look at that and say it's exuberance and rustiness, and maybe, let's say, weirdly, middle of November, middle of December, yes, you can give a red card for that. I think opening day of the season, it was harsh. I do actually think that Cesc Fabregas' later on in the game was perfectly justified. But then they capitulated after that and allowed Burnley to take advantage, which they duly did. I think it was 3-0 was very flattering for Burnley. They didn't really have to. They played well, but they didn't actually have to work that hard to go 3-0. It's in a similar way to the Liverpool result there. And Liverpool's is horrible because, as a Liverpool fan, it's a draw that feels like a defeat, and they're the worst type of draws you can get. What it will do is it adds further fuel to the fire of fans saying, we need to strengthen, we need more depth, we need this, we need this. Now, Chelsea spent over 100 million, Liverpool spent less than 50. But what it is doing is it's showing the managers, it's, let's say Liverpool beat Watford 3-2, and then Chelsea beat Burnley 4-1, and then Liverpool beat Hoffenheim and anything like that. You can kind of then look at it as a coach, as a fan, or etc., and say, well, do you know what, maybe we do have enough here for these extra challenges. Maybe we do have enough there. When the actual reality is that neither team, I don't think, does have enough for the extra added challenge of Champions League football, etc. So it will be kind of interesting to see what happens in the next sort of 10 to 15 days at both Liverpool and Chelsea. But all power to Burnley. It's an away win that they probably never thought they would get this season, and that's what for clubs like Burnley, whose chief kind of aim this season will be survival. Those are the kind of results that leave you lift you from place 17 to place 14, which is worth millions nowadays. So there is that. So it's like a result there. Crystal Palace 0, Huddersfield 3. Frank de Boer's debut as Crystal Palace manager, and they were woeful. They were awful, abject. They seem to have no organisation. They seem to be treating it almost like a pre-season friendly. And Huddersfield came out the traps really wanting to kind of lay down a marker to say, yeah, you know what, we might not be ready. We might not be have the infrastructure or even the name or the story or anything to kind of to carry this over. Like, for instance, Newcastle coming up. Newcastle, no matter what you say, they're a big name, a too big a name to be in the Championship. Or Brighton, that have been building towards getting into the Premier League with the Amex Stadium and the infrastructure they've got there. They've been building for this for a good 5 or 6 years, and they should have got in a couple of years ago. Huddersfield have got a good manager and have kind of ridden the crest of a wave into that, and they didn't expect to get there, but they're going to damn well enjoy it, and they're going to see if they can do a thing that not a lot of clubs have done, where they can go, right, well, we're here now, let's make a good fist of it, but let's not mortgage the club's future. But at the same time, let's see if we can survive, and then survive another year, and then build from there. And it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. The key point, I think, for that is keeping David Wagner there, because he's, like a lot of teams nowadays, the Premier League has a bit of a dearth of world-class players in its ranks at the moment. But what we do have is we have box office managers, and we have incredible managers in people like, for instance, Guardiola, Conte, Mourinho, Klopp. We have the managerial names, and Ben are obviously there as well. So we have a lot of teams where the stars of the team are the managers, and I think Wagner there is his footballing ethos, nous knowledge, and the way that he views football there. It could be very interesting to see how that goes. Of course, very close friends with Jurgen Klopp, so it'll be interesting to see what happens when those two worlds collide. Then moving back on to Everton 1, Stoke City 0. Rooney, written in the stars, that wasn't it? Rooney going back to the club that he left 13 years ago, and that have spent 13 years booing him and calling him a traitorous bastard, for him to then score and act like the king has returned. Well, yes, he has, because nowhere else to go. So Everton, Everton have done some sturdy business in the transfer window. There's no getting away from it, and they are, without a doubt, they're very much the 7th best club in the Premier League. They're outside of that 6 that have aspirations for Champions League players or winning it. Everton would like to be part of that, would see themselves as part of that, and that's perfectly fine. And but it would take 6th, 5th, and 4th. So it would take 3 out of those 6 teams, it would take 3 out of Chelsea, Spurs, Manchester City, Liverpool, Man United and Arsenal. It would take 3 out of those to have very poor seasons and Everton to have a very good season for Everton to break in that top 4, and that is a really tough ask, but at least they're giving it a go, and at least that they're looking at it and saying, do you know what, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at breaking that. We want to be considered that. We want it to be the top. We want it to be 7 clubs fighting for it, not 6. And so you can't blame that. Stoke had a bit of a rocky, I think, a bit of a rocky summer in the sense that they lost Marc their ins, Kurt Zouma on loan. They're looking at bringing Jesse Rodriguez in, the former Real Madrid player who was at PSG last season. They're looking at bringing him in on loan or even a permanent deal. And it does seem like I don't think the wheels have come off that project that Mark Hughes has got there, or the whole thing there, but it does seem a little bit like the train's been left at the station as everyone's starting to whiz by, maybe. So I do think Stoke could do more business in the next couple of weeks, and I think they are a club that does their business late on, because they go out and see maybe players who thought they were going to get bigger moves and have not got them. Stoke will then go out and look for those players and go, well, hang on a minute, you might not get that, but if you come play here for a couple of years and showcase yourself, one of these clubs around here or one of these clubs around Europe might want to take you off their hands. So that's what I think will happen there. Southampton against Swansea, there's always one dull as balls game, and that was that dull as ball games. Southampton had a lot of chances, peppered Swansea's goal, but Swansea, they look like a more resilient team. I still think they'll be in and around a relegation fight, but I think they should be okay. Losing or the possible loss of Gylfi Sigurdsson to Everton, that's going to impact on them because of what he brings there. However, what he does bring is great delivery from set pieces, but in terms of general movement, he's not the most dynamic of players. I think Gylfi Sigurdsson is a fantastic player. I really do. I really rate him quite highly. I've rated him since he was at Reading, where I remember Reading played Liverpool in a League Cup game, and he was fantastic. Gylfi Sigurdsson, and it's Shane Long actually scored the goals at not start of that game. But I remember Gylfi Sigurdsson thinking, if he's available and we could get hold of him, I think he went to. Did he go to Hoffenheim or Werder Bremen? I think he went to. Or Wolfsburg, it might have even been one of the German teams anyway. He went there for about $5.5 million. I couldn't believe that no Premier League took a chance on him, and then obviously he came back with Spurs, etc., and it ended up at Swansea. Or he went to Swansea and then to Spurs, and then went back to Swansea. That was it. So that's going to happen there, but there's always going to be one of those dull games, and then another dull game, West Brom against Bournemouth. Typical. That felt like the most standard game. That's a very result you could expect there. West Brom getting a solid win at home, and Bournemouth, they've got Eddie Howe has a set way he wants to play, and he wants to play what I'm doing the inverted commas thing of real football. Every team's entitled to play the way they want to play. So I don't, or proper football, I suppose is the phrase. I don't like the phrase proper football. I think it's there are a lot of ways to win a football match. I'm not a big fan of the dark arts, but Tony Pulis has a style, and it's got him very far. It's yard dog to the extreme, and it's alehouse football. But if you're going to come up against that, you've got to have a plan for playing against it. Much in the same ways, if you're coming up against a low block like West Brom play, or if you're playing a high line like Bournemouth play, then you've got to have plans for that. It's all about the tactics in the same way as Watford actually play quite well on Liverpool's tactics. Liverpool play with quite a high line, and they split the centre backs, the wingers, the full backs almost act as wingers. And you need a centre back split, and your defensive midfielder drops in to create almost like the almost posing to a Liberto position, where it's the position often that Franco Baresi used to play for AC Milan, where he'd drop in and he'd play, or he'd actually drop out of the the Milan defence and come forward and sit just in front of it there. And so Watford played on that by essentially going out to the wings and attacking those positions. These are the things you've got to do to tactically break these teams down. And if you want to tactically break a Turin Purist team down, you have to do different to what Bournemouth did, which is they tried too much to play their own game. Now, if you're a Barcelona, a Bayern Munich, a Juventus, you can play your own game against anybody. Bournemouth haven't earned the right or won the right yet to play their own game. They do have to switch it up a little bit, and I think that maybe that's the early kind of exuberance of the first game of the season. I have a feeling that's played again. I'm saying this a lot in October or in February. I think that's maybe a different result. It's a harder game for West Brom. Much the same as you've got Brighton home Albion against Manchester City. Brighton actually have been building to be in the Premier League for a number of years. They've got a great stadium in the Amex. It seems like a place that a lot of top Premier League fans want to have in the Premier League, because it's a good away trip. I mean, you've swapped an away weekend in Hull, no offence to people from Hull, but an away weekend in Hull to an away weekend in Brighton. I know where most people are going to want to go. Man City with, again, what felt like a fairly sort of standard win. They didn't have to bust a gut to get it. Aguero gets his goal. New players bedded in, but not really a challenge. It'll be interesting to see. Across Manchester City, I remember sort of 5-6 games of last season, people were saying, well, who's going to beat them, how they're going to get beat, and then people started to figure out how to play against this Guardiola side, and so it seems like what an amazing thing of what's happened is Man City have brought in what is arguably the best coach in the world at the moment, and he's come in and said, I'll give you the best team in the world if you go out and buy me the 2 best players for each position. That isn't a theory that I've come up with myself, but I read that somewhere. I can't remember where I read it, but it's true. They've gone out and they've bought 2 right backs, 2 left backs. They've bought. It's staggering the amount they've spent, and I don't think they're done. I think they'll still spend more before the end of the transfer window, and it's kind of like they have to this season win the Premier League or the Champions League, or even both. To be honest, for it to be deemed anywhere near a successful investment. Now, I think last season questions weren't asked, and even Guardiola acknowledged himself if he'd have had the season he had last season at Barcelona or Bayern Munich, he'd have been sacked. Now, and he can't finish third this season. He can either finish second and win the Champions League, or finish first and maybe get to the final of the Champions League. It's a tall ask, but they've spent an awful lot of money, and there's an awful lot of talent there. But is it the right balance of talent is what I would say there. I think it's going to be an interesting season for Manchester City in the sense of, do some of those players have the cutting edge that I can't even say, but I've never seen from this Manchester City team over the past 5 or 6 years, and that includes title-winning Manchester City teams and teams that have got to very far in the Champions League. I've never seen that sheer belligerence towards winning, and that sheer we're doing this at absolutely all costs that you used to see from, for instance, a Alex Ferguson Manchester United team. That it's an expectance, not an arrogance of we're going to win because we're the best. It's we're going to win because it's what we do, and that's what you used to get from Fergie's at Manchester United. It's why he used to say to them after they won something, right, enjoy this, because it starts a game. You've got this weekend, you've got tonight, or this weekend, you've got the next few days, but then after that, it's forgotten about. It's about winning it next year, and that's when it starts. And I think that Manchester City, there's players there that feel like they've arrived when they've got to Manchester City, rather than they've been given the chance to prove that they've arrived. So that's Saturdays. Sundays, Newcastle against Tottenham. Tottenham was slightly on top, and then it kind of all changed when Shelvey did his silly little stamp that he did. Shelvey's got that in his locker. Several people who've worked with him, I think Alan Pardew said it during his punditry work for Sky, and that when he managed Shelvey, he said he's got that in him. And Jimmy Carragher saying that he was like it in training. He's got that. He's got a short fuse, and it comes on very, very quickly. I think that John George Shelvey, could be a fantastic player. I think he genuinely could be a dominating midfielder. I just think his mentality isn't quite there, and it was proved that he's been given the captaincy at Newcastle, and straight away he's done something that stupid. Spurs picked up where they left off last season. They look like a force. They're a superb team to watch. They play great football. They've got great understanding. They are the absolute sum of all their parts, and I'll be honest, I was gutted for Harry Kane when he hit the post, because he needs to get a goal in August, because it's becoming a thing now that he doesn't score goals in August, and he's too good a player to have that hanging over him. Spurs got a good win in what was a potentially difficult place to kind of go on the opening day of the season, but they proved very much like, do you know what, we might not have done any business, but it's very hard to. It's a hard sell getting players in at Tottenham, because Daniel Levy and Tottenham are not going to spend the money to get players in that's going to better that 11. But are players going to go there knowing that they're going to have to fight to get into that 11, because it's such a strong 11? So you're looking at buying players who could be in the 11 in a couple of years' time, and even there you're looking at spending. For instance, they need a striker. Janssen didn't work. Son debuted quite well, but I think he's better used out towards the left. So they need a striker to play in that position when Harry Kane misses 3 or 4 games. Because he has appeared, but he'll miss a few weeks. He's got that in his locker. So they need a striker in there. Now, usually they'd take a chance on somebody, Josh King, for instance, the Bournemouth player there, but Josh King now will cost 30 million. A year ago, he'd have cost 15 million. The same as a player from Spain. You're bringing in, you're taking that chance. You look at their Perez that Arsenal brought in. They brought him for 20 million. They're now trying to get 20 million back for him. It just doesn't make sense. I'll move on to Manchester United 4, West Ham 0. West Ham hate playing Manchester United. I watched this whole game. Manchester United were very good. Very good. They're looking more and more like a textbook Mourinho team. They're big, they're powerful, they're aggressive. They do those things well. And as good as Manchester United were, and they were very good, West Ham were abysmal. They're a quite frankly terrible team. They've spent money this summer. They've brought in what was perceived to be big name players, but they've not strengthened that woeful defence that they've got. And it's a player like bringing in Chicharito there. He needs the service to get the goals. Now, Marc, bringing him in for 25 million, essentially what you've done is you've brought in a smart price Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That's what Marc is. He's going to get you maybe 6 to 8 goals a season, and of those 6 to 8 goals, 4 of them might be absolutely world-class goals. But he doesn't do it 35 out of 38 games. He does it 8 out of 35 games. And then you'll get 5 where he'll give you decent performances, but he loses the ball a lot. I think West Ham, it could be a worrying season for them. It's Manchester United were very, very good. Don't take it away, but West Ham were very, very poor. My team of the week, I'm going to do this every week. My team of the week, Huddersfield, 3-0 away from home, first game in the Premier League. I don't think you can take that away from them. That's a heck of a result. What Huddersfield will be looking at is that magic sort of 40-point marker, and that's 3 points towards it already straight away. That's 3 points away from home. My player of the week, I'm also going to do a player of the week every week. Romelu Lukaku, 2 goals on his first league game for Manchester United. He's a shoo-in for the top scorer. A great thing that United have got in Lukaku is he's I am fucking jinxing. I'm not about to say I'm hoping I'm not jinxing him. He very much does play pretty much week in, week out, and he will score pretty much week in, week out for Manchester United. And as long as they play to his strengths, then they'll be A-OK with that. It will be interesting to see actually what a more heavy fixture schedule, what that impact that has on Lukaku and that tremendous kind of resilience he has for playing games. So that will be interesting to see what happens there. But United have got a really strong squad this season, and they're going to be up there challenging for the title without question. And Mourinho's bought smart this season. I still think there's there's room for improvement from them. I still think defensively they look a little bit lax. Lindelof didn't play, and they bought him for 30 odd million, and he wasn't even in the squad. So you're relying on players like Jones to bear fruit, and I just don't think they've got it in them. Jones is the sort of player, he might go on a run of 5 games and look fantastic, but then he's got a rick in him. That's the thing. That's why United have spent 50 odd million in 2 seasons on centre backs so far. They might spend more. It's because quite simply Jones and Smalling are mid-table to upper mid-table Premier League defenders. They've been saved by De Gea quite a lot. Going forward, United are frightening this season. That forward line of Lukaku, Mata, Mkhitaryan in there, and Pogba. Having Matic in there gives Pogba that little bit of freedom to kind of not have to worry about what's going on behind him, and he can just focus on what's in front of him, which I think was a little bit of something that held him back last season. He always looked better when he had that security blanket behind him at Juventus, and I think that he'll certainly benefit from having Matic there to do essentially his grunt work and his dirty work, the work that Matters likes doing and he's good at doing. And it frees up Pogba to essentially have those moments where he doesn't track back as much, and he can focus on what's in front of him rather than what's behind him. So it's a clear bit of business, as you'd expect from Jose Mourinho there. So opening day of the season, or opening weekend of the season, I suppose. A lot of goals. I think it shows it shows the Premier League for what it is. It's the most entertaining of the big leagues out there, but certainly not the best in quality, without question. And this can lead me into the sort of the transfer talk that I'll do, and I'll discuss some. I'll go through my kit rundown at the end of the show. It brings me to the transfer thing. The crazy sort of fees we're getting at the moment are indicative of what's going on in the Premier League at the moment. It's not. Premier League clubs are not buying better players. They're just paying more for the players that they were buying anyway. So last season a £25 million player is now a £40 million player, and it's because the Premier League clubs have this amazing wealth that's been given to them by TV deals, and it's allowing them to spend more. And it's why, for instance, ridiculously, the most at 34 million looks like an absolute bargain now, where when you see someone like Marc going for 25 million, it's crazy. And then you look at some of the fees that have been paid are astronomical. The fees that have been banded about, and then you have obviously the whole Neymar going for 198 million to PSG, which of course takes the transfer record and doubles it and adds some to it, and then you've got the fallout from that, as seeing Philippe Coutinho have their transfer request at Liverpool and ask essentially to leave and be allowed to go and join Barcelona. I think what's got to be taken there is I don't think Philippe Coutinho wants to leave Liverpool. I think he wants to join Barcelona, which of course means to join Barcelona you have to leave Liverpool. I think that's the team he wants to leave for. It's quite a strange point. I think this was a natural thing that was going to happen. I think Philippe Coutinho was always going to go and join Barcelona. He's lived around the area before. His family enjoy the area. It's closer in culture to Brazil than England is, and Philippe Coutinho might really enjoy playing at Liverpool. He might love playing at Liverpool. He might love the city. He might love the club, etc. But I do think that there's a draw to clubs like Barcelona for the South American players, and it will have probably have been his dream as a kid play for Barcelona. I mean, he's outright come out and said that. I think the expected thought within Liverpool circles and even within Barcelona circles was that that Barcelona were coming for Philippe Coutinho next summer, and he would come in and he would replace Andres Iniesta. Of course, the Neymar deal has then created ripple effect, which has reached Merseyside and has caused Philippe Coutinho, or Barcelona's need to get Philippe Coutinho to extend to this year. Also, as well, with the way that transfer fees are going, there's a possibility that Barcelona are looking at it. And Barcelona are a huge club and one of the biggest clubs in the world, but they don't have the expendable wealth of a club like a Real Madrid or a Bayern Munich or the top Premier League clubs. So they have to be a little bit, and always have been, a little bit more playing on the draw and the aura of playing for Barcelona to try and encourage players to kind of angle for that move so they can get players that little bit cheaper. What's playing against that is the fact is that teams know that they've got 198 million windfall from the Neymar deal. So immediately the 90 million that they might have been able to get Coutinho for at the start of July is now 120 million, and the structuring of the deal might have been at 90 million, might have been, right, well, here's 35 up front, and then the rest are going to be delivered over the next 5 years of the contract. There'll be certain add-ons and things like that. Now, clubs like Liverpool or Borussia Dortmund, where they're trying to get Ousmane Dembele, these clubs know that Barcelona have this 198 million kitty that they've got there. That it's cash. It was delivered, because it was not technically a transfer. It was a release buyout. They have to be paid all up front. So they've got this money, and so Liverpool quite rightly could be saying around to Barcelona and saying, right, it's 120 million. Let's say it's 110 million, but you want 70 of that up front, and then Liverpool could then turn around to Southampton and say, look, we know you don't want to sell us Virgil van Dijk. You prefer to sell him anywhere but us. But how about if instead of it being 30 million and then the rest of this 40 million over the next 4 years or 5 years of this contract, it's, there you go, there's 50 million down payment, you get 50 million, and then the next 20 million is paid over in installments, etc. So there's that. Personally, once a player has a transfer request and says they want to go, I think what you have to do is I don't think you have to let them go, I don't think you have to give it a player power, but as a fan, or even as a manager, I wouldn't want anybody at my club that wanted to be somewhere else. I'm not saying that I think Philippe Coutinho's head will drop or that his performances will dip. It can't. He's still got to play very well because he wants to go play for Brazil at the World Cup next year, and he's cemented his place firmly there. And I think he's vice captain to Neymar for the Brazil team. And as soon as I've already made my prediction that I think Neymar will get sent off in the World Cup there because I think he'll get himself too riled up. Philippe Coutinho could at some point be captaining his home nation at a World Cup, which would be an amazing thing for him. So he's not going to down tools. He's just not that kind of player. But I do think footballers' careers are short. They are in the great scheme of things in terms of their playing careers. Sorry, and I do think that there's an element of now. Liverpool are not going to. Philippe Coutinho isn't going to be the thing that finally wins Liverpool their next title, the long-awaited next title. This is our year. Now, I'm not a this is our year Liverpool fan every year, but Philippe Coutinho isn't going to be the thing that wins that. Like, for instance, Suarez very nearly was. He's just not that. He's not that good. He's very good, but he's not that good. So if he's not going to be that, there's an argument to let him go. The issue with that is you've got 2 weeks to replace him, and he wouldn't replace him. The position already needs and somebody else there anyway. Now Liverpool, from what we understand as Liverpool fans, have been trying to spend money all summer and have not been able to. So currently they've got 150 million burning a fucking hole in their pocket that they can't spend. What's throwing another 120 million going to do into there? They're not going to spend £250 million in 2 weeks. No matter what PR spin you put on it, and no matter who you bring in, it's still going to look like a chaotic transfer window. And it's going to look like a chaotic transfer window. It's going to look like a badly managed transfer window for Liverpool. For the simple fact is, so far it has been a badly managed transfer window. From what started out very well, getting Mohamed Salah with his record that he had in Italy. And if anybody there is saying, yes, but that's in Italy, clearly you've not watched Italian football for the past few fucking years, because it's not like the defensive core that it used to be that I grew up with watching Football Italia on Channel 4. It's a lot more attacking than it used to be, and it's a lot more free-flowing than it used to be. The tactical awareness is still there, but it's been the defensive solidity and the defensive stoicism has been replaced by almost this European free-flowing football or the Mediterranean football of Basque football, rather than what was very much a tight, rigid ball-playing football that kind of everything came from the back and everyone played with a low block, and you often saw, strikers would be, your top scoring striker would get 20 goals a season. That's the top scorer of the entire league. Now you're getting midfielders, for instance, Salah last season getting 19 goals, also Insigne at Napoli, playing as a partner striker, not quite a midfielder but not quite a striker. He got 19 goals last season. So that there's that to look at. Italian football has changed quite significantly over the past sort of 5 years, since the money kind of dried up, and the way that Italian football has changed quite significantly. So you've got to look at that. That was good business, but since then, the failure to get Van Dijk, the failure to get Keita has left a bit of a cloud on there. Now, if you fail to get both those players and then you lose Coutinho, then it's what the fuck went wrong. So it's going to be a very interesting few weeks as a Liverpool fan. Personally, I like I said, I'd let him go, but I'd be asking for at least a player in return and 90 million. So Ivan Rakitic and 90 million, or something like that, is what I'd be saying there. Like I said, the Neymar thing is crazy. I do think that there's... I think it's a strange season. There was no major competition. You had the Confederations Cup, but it was considered very minor. There was no major international tournament football being played this summer. So everyone kind of had a free-for-all, and it all went a bit crazy. The Premier League money made everything go a bit mad, and everyone was kind of itching to spend this money. But if you look at it, it's a group of clubs that have spent a lot of money, and then the rest of the teams have not really joined that pack, and are kind of looking at it going, well, hang on a minute. Is the market being dictated by the market? If we hold back, maybe the player was usually what it was before is, if you had a player who was worth 15 million and you waited to the last week of the transfer window, it might cost you 18 to 20 million. This season, a player that should cost you 20 million, if you were to buy them in the third week of July, they might cost you 30 million or 35 million. There's a possibility that, for instance, Ross Barkley, Everton, there's a prime example, Ross Barkley. Now, it would appear Tottenham want Ross Barkley. Everton would like to sell Ross Barkley. Now, Everton would like 50 million. Tottenham don't want to pay more than 25 million for a player who is entering the last year of his contract. So, Everton want 50 million. Tottenham want to spend half of that. They're not going to meet in the middle, but what might happen is it might get, as it gets further and further and closer, and the Gylfi Sigurdsson's a key thing here. If Everton get that Gylfi Sigurdsson deal over the line, there's no place for Barkley there. They're not going to keep him sat there in his squad winding down his contract, because they'd have to play him over Sigurdsson, and then the fans would be saying, what, you spent 50 million on Sigurdsson if you're not even going to play him? They'd have to play him over Sigurdsson to get him to sign a new contract. If they play him under, if he's not going to sign a new contract, he's going to leave for nothing. So Tottenham are kind of playing a game where they're saying, do you know what, we'd like him, we want him, we don't need him. So they might go in the last week and go, right, do you know what, here's 25 million and we'll take him off your hands now. It placates Tottenham fans a little bit because they've signed what is deemed to be hot English property. I think Ross Barkley is a bit flattered to deceive. I don't see it with him, and it's not just the pro Liverpool anti Everton bias. I don't see it. The guy's 24 years old and he's still referred to as a player with promise. You fucking hell, you're kidding me. You should have started to very much fulfil that promise at 24 years old nowadays. I think Messi won his first Ballon d'Or at 24 years old. I'm not comparing it to Messi, by the way. So there's that. They will look at that, and if they can't get him for 25 million, they'll say, you know what, we'll wait. We don't need him. We just like him. And they might even wait to January, and then it's 12 million in January if he still isn't going to sign a contract. So there's a little bit of that waiting game. I think that teams are looking at that and seeing, not desperate, they're looking to see what they can pick up later towards the end of the transfer window. From Europe or from within the Premier League itself. I still think Oxlade-Chamberlain could go. I think he's biding his time and seeing, and Arsenal are trying to get a bidding war started between between Chelsea and Liverpool for his services. I think he'd like to go somewhere where he doesn't feel like he's the squad utility player, and I think he's looking at it as this is the move that makes his career, and that's fine. I'd like to see him at Liverpool, but I don't think 35 million is fair play for a player who's in the last year of his contract. So it could be interesting to see what happens there. I will do a transfer rundown if there's a lot that goes on in the next couple of weeks, but obviously I'll chat more about it next week when we cover next week's games. Well, let's have a wee little look at football kits, something I've been asked to do, to kind of rate and go through the football kits. So I have all of them up on picture here, and I'm going to go through them and kind of just give a rundown on what I think about these kits. So I'm going to start at Arsenal. Classic Arsenal kit, like it, not a big fan of the weird little collar thing they've got going on. Their away kit is pretty standard Arsenal away kit, but always a little bit not quite there. It looks a little bit like, I think it was the Bournemouth or Sunderland away kit from last season. Their third kit looks like a training top. Bournemouth's home kit, nice, simple black and red stripes with the black, tougher black arms there. It's a nice kit. Their away kit looks like a Coventry kit from the mid-90s. So yeah, it's all right. Not a shocking kit, perfectly all right kit. I bought a third kit for some reason, which again, it looks like a t-shirt. They've slapped a badge on, just black with toxic green sleeves. Brighton have gone for a raglan cut on their kit with the stripes, different coloured sleeves to the actual stripes. It's a nice enough looking kit. Looks quite kind of Spanish. Looks quite sort of European in that fold there. And then their away kit's not actually listed on here, so I apologise to Brian for not being able to go with the away kit. Bournemouth could not have more of a Football League looking kit if they tried. Not Bournemouth, Burnley couldn't have more of a Football League looking kit if they tried. Seriously, try acting like a fucking Premier League club. People start taking you seriously as a Premier League club, and that goes the same as your away kit. Chelsea who've had decent looking kits the past few seasons, just looks like a Nike t-shirt. Yeah, not a lot going on there. The away kit is nice though. The white on the blue is nice. Very simple kit from Crystal Palace. Quite simply, looks like they bought it out of the back of 4-4-2. But their away kit's very nice. Their away kit's very nice. A black with just like a stripe across the chest that has white borders and the same colour as the home kit stripes going across it. That's a nice looking away kit. Everton's kit's perfectly fine. So it's a fairly Everton looking kit, to be honest. And their away kit is just a white version of the same thing. and their third shirt is it's not too bad looking. The purple and black stripes. Huddersfield, again, it looks thoroughly Football League, but I quite like it. It's, you know, it looks like the sort of kit a team would have worn again in the mid-90s. There's a lot going on there. I quite like it. Leicester's is just fairly Leicester looking. It's just a blue shirt with a little bit of white on the sleeves. Not a lot going on there. And then we go for the black and gold away kit. I very much like the Liverpool kit. It's a nice looking shirt. The sort of the slightly deeper red on there and the big thick kind of collar aping back to the kits we used to wear in sort of like the early 80s. It's a nice looking kit. Not too much a fan of the away kit, the cross thing. It's to celebrate the 125 year anniversary, and I can get that. But it's alright, but it's an uninspired looking away kit. And then we have the orange third kit. I love a third kit, and I think that your third kit should be batshit. Your third kit should be fucking stupid. If you're a football team, you need a third kit. You want to make that third kit look ridiculous. And if it doesn't look ridiculous, you are failing at having a third kit. And ours looks ridiculous. It's orange. They look like Watsits. Brilliant. Man City, again, very similar to the Everton one in the fact it just looks like a blue t-shirt. And their away kit looks like a pinky purple t-shirt there. Man United, I like Man United kits, nice looking kit to be honest. Man United always have quite nice looking kits though, to be fair to them. With the exception of that one, like a tea-tail bed a few years ago, that one very nice. But yeah, it's a nice looking kit. Classic Adidas top, it's a good looking shirt. Their away shirt looks like a training top. Newcastle's looks very Newcastle, but again looks a little bit championshipy. Oh god, that Newcastle third kit. That's like their third kit. Oh, that's horrible. It's just black, but with like shiny gold badges. Yes. Southampton's home kit, nice with the full chest piece there and the arms going away from the stripes. It's a nice looking kit to be honest. I'm quite impressed with that. Their away kit's also quite nice as well. The stripes there. Have Stoke even changed their kit? I'm not sure. Does Stoke even know if they've changed their kit? Does anyone care or know if they've changed their kit? That away kit is lovely. It's like a petrol kind of blue with like a strip across the chest going across there with the stripes, the blue and the red and the white stripes getting sort of more sporadic going across. That's a really nice kit actually, that. Swansea looks strange enough for a Welsh team. They look like rugby tops. Quite nice actually. Spurs, again, I'm not a big fan of these new night shirts that just look like t-shirts with the badge slapped on them. And their away kit, yeah, is the same. Actually, Watford, for a team who wear a yellow kit, it's a good looking kit. Adidas have done a decent job on that. And their away kit, red, looks like a t-shirt, sorry. A lot of teams look like a t-shirt. West Brom, not a lot you can do with a team as dull as West Brom, is what I'm going to say there. But their away shirt's quite nice. Getting a raglan sleeve in red and then the white chest there. That's a nice looking kit. Again, West Ham doesn't look like they've changed it at all. And their away kit's dull. Yes, back to there. So that was my kit rundown. Hope people enjoyed that. Actually, I have no questions, which I'm deeply hurt about. So fuck you guys. That was so. That is episode 3 of DaaM-U-Football. This will become hopefully should be, fingers crossed, a weekly show to just run down the events of the football week. So I thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy this show. I hope you enjoy the regular free show. And remember, we've got a Patreon site now, so it's Patreon/Dude and the Monkey. There's at least 4 shows a month on there, but there is going to be between sort of 4 and however many we do, but it isn't at least 4 shows on there. New shows will be added. We try to get at least 1 or 2 out every week, but they come and kind of, we drop them out as and when. We're just kind of getting used to the Patreon thing, so they'll become a more set period, but we don't really want to state we're going to drop 1 every Monday and then every Friday and then anything like that, because then we've got to fucking do it. But what we will say is there'll be at least an extra 4 shows a month for just $3, which we think is an absolute bargain to listen to liquid audio gold like this. Audio liquid, that's strange. I don't understand that. But again, thank you very much for listening. DudeAndMonkey.com, at DudeAndMonkey, at DudeFoz, at Ian Loring. Nothing else to go over, and I shall speak to you later. Thank you very much. Bye.